should go first, unless you guys want to go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, Brett, you cool with that?
I'm cool, man.
All right, guys. So this right here is the Fujifilm X100V, and that is the lens cap that comes with it. And just to show you guys, hear that?
Mm-hmm.
It's metal. It's beautiful. This camera, you know, the overall philosophy behind the design hasn't really changed since they came out. It's really just been about having like a compact rangefinder body, inspired by a couple others. I mean, there's the Contact series of cameras that used to be out there, the Contacts like G1 and G2. You can say that for the X Pro 3, which I also have over here. And it's also been inspired by stuff like the Canon QL17, which is still a very hot camera in the vintage market and still bought up. And, you know, I remember years ago we were doing articles on those and the price would just shoot up, and prices still shoot up. I haven't even checked them out on eBay recently. I can't even imagine how expensive they are. They're probably like $600-700 or something. But that aside, the Fujifilm X100V, you know, there's two strap lugs, but I've always felt that, you know, this series of camera, because it's so small, it goes really well with the wrist strap. Let me show you something. So this is the X Pro 3 right here. This is the X100V. It's smaller, and obviously that 35 equivalent lens is also incredibly small. Now, the cool thing about this is that they weather sealed this entire body, except for this lens. So if you want full weather sealing, then what you have to do is you got to take off this little ring here. And thank you to Fujifilm, by the way, for sending this to me. And you get their little adapter ring, and you get a UV filter or any other filter. And now you attach it, and now this whole thing is perfectly fully weather sealed. This camera, you know, ergonomically, it hasn't really changed from a lot of the other iterations. Some of the biggest changes that have happened over the years were the addition of the joystick, obviously. The stacked dial. So this dial is different. The previous one used like this stacked ISO dial and shutter speed dial, and you'd have to hold it up and you'd have to turn it at the same time in order to actually make the setting. But this time around, all you have to do is just pull up like that, and now you can change the ISO. And if you want to change the shutter speed, you just go ahead and do that. And this is a pretty rugged dial. It's pretty stiff. What is not a very stiff dial is this other dial right here. This is the exposure compensation dial. Hopefully you guys can see that. Let me get rid of this light just a tad. There you go. Exposure compensation dial. This dial desperately needs a lock, because there will be times when you grip on the camera and you're supposed to grip it like this, but then sometimes your hand may just like go like that and you don't even realize that you're turning it. So suddenly, if you're shooting an aperture priority, you're going to be like, hey, what's going on? Like, why are my images so off? It can be really underexposed or really overexposed, and you won't really know what's happening. So that's one usability issue that I have with this. Another usability issue that I have with this, you know, first off, the touchscreen. We've talked about the touchscreen many times before. Brett, you were talking about it was the XT200, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Yeah. That thing is mostly touchscreen, and it works very well with the Fujifilm menu system. This has a touchscreen that really only works for shooting. So when you go around and you shoot, you know, you can go ahead and you can do something like this. And that's actually very fun. But otherwise, I'd really like to be able to navigate through the menu system, but it doesn't really allow me to do that via the touchscreen, and I don't like that. I think that Fujifilm really needs to change that. Other things about this, the autofocus is actually very fantastic. There are the various autofocus modes. You know, there's AFC, which is continuous, AFS, which is single, and then manual. And then there's like point, zone, AF wide and tracking, AF wide. And in any combination of those, I was realizing that I wasn't using the right combination to actually shoot images in the street. But once I figured it out a little bit better and I tweaked it a little bit more, and that includes like tracking sensitivity and stuff like that, I was able to actually nail pretty much every image. It's not like Sony A9 level fast, but it's very close. I'd say it's probably even rivaling the Canon EOS R and the EOS RP in terms of like autofocus speed, which is really, really great. Other things about this. Why don't I get into the images? This camera, I'm not going to say it's crippled, but I will say that it's got a couple of differences in the image quality that you might not necessarily like. So if you're an X Pro 3 fan, then know that you're not going to get the Clarity Edition, which is a really great thing to have for Acros, but you will get all of the film simulations otherwise. I'm just trying to find these images. If you are an XT4 user, the XT4, I believe, is the only camera that has the bleach bypass, correct, Paul?
Yeah, it's it's a brand new edition. It's the Eterna bleach bypass is the official name for it.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, it works for motion as well as still.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. So I'm going to go back into Zoom now. I have this open, and I am going to show you guys some images. Go back to Zoom, share screen. Let's go into this one. Let me know if you see these. Do you see them, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this was an autofocus track test that I did with Paul when we were walking. I was just telling him to walk towards me. And each of these photos, he's sharp.
I think you're looking at a different photo set.
You're not seeing that?
No.
I think these are photos of Tyson.
Oh, huh. Okay, let me... Oh, these. This is what you're seeing. So these, right?
Yep.
Do you see me going through?
Yep.
Okay. Weird. Okay. So these, this is an autofocus test that I did in low light. This is my buddy Tyson who runs Arrogant Swine. And here in New York, we're entering stage 2 of COVID recovery, rather, and reopening and stuff like that. So I decided I'd go by. He told me to come by, try some of his new fried chicken. And I decided I'd do an autofocus tracking test on him in low light. And, you know, the back of the kitchen, it's really, really dark, but it's catching him every single time. And that is fantastic and incredibly reliable. Now, these are some images of like people around Queens, New York, and I was able to get them all in focus. Like this guy running, got him perfectly in focus each and every time. These are just some product shots that I did on the rooftop. Obviously, it's a beautiful camera, as you can see. And this is to show you guys that it really is incredibly weather sealed. Fujifilm, all three of us can attest to this. They really don't play around with weather sealing. It's really, really incredibly solid. And you see that here holistically. I've done this with the X Pro 3, with the XH1, X Pro 2, XT3, XT4. And, you know, the camera can always just keep working. Some people would be like, oh, I don't want to get any water on my camera. But you should be very happy to know that if you buy this camera, it will be able to stand up to everything. So that's pretty awesome. This is, I think I shot this in Provia mode. And, I mean, the color rendition is really nice. The sensor on this is the same sensor that was on the XT3, which is the same one that's in the X Pro 3 and the XT4. And also, is it the same one in the XT200, Brett?
I believe so.
It's a 26 or 28 megapixel sensor.
Well, the XT200's it's not X-Trans.
Oh right.
Yeah, it was a 20. I think it's a 24 megapixel non-X-Trans.
Yeah. Okay. Then it's more akin to like what you see in Sony or like
Right.
Nikon or something like that. This is an X-Trans sensor. Thank you for reminding me of that. Acros on this, you know, it's really nice. It's great. The thing about this is, if you're coming from the X Pro 3 and then you go, I don't want to say down to the X 100V because, you know, it's a different beast. But I sort of miss the addition of the clarity setting. And I know everyone's going to say, like, oh, I can do that in post. But if you don't do it in post, like, your images just have it there and they pop so much more. And they look great. Like, you have to experience it. more images. This is around my neighborhood. There has been a lot of construction since like end of February, and they paused it. This is more of Long Island City, Queens. This is in Williamsburg. High ISOs on this are really, really good. We printed an image at 17 by 22, and you know, there's very, very little color noise. You have to get incredibly close to see it. If you follow us on Instagram, you can actually see there was a video that we did where I got in very close to the print, and you can see like there isn't really that much. This is another low light test. It does a pretty good job in terms of autofocusing, but sometimes I think it really depends as well too. Like you have to really tweak the autofocus sensitivity settings that are in the back. A lot of people probably won't do that, but if you remember to, you'll get pretty great results overall. Something I also really do like about this is there's a built-in ND filter, and obviously I'm not using that for these images, but it's worth it to note that even though the lens got an upgrade, I don't think that the ND filter got an upgrade. So when you slap it on, it seems like there's this weird softness to your images, and that's sort of unfortunate. I figured I'd just shoot this image because I thought it was really cool. Like they covered up the Apple Store because they were afraid of looters, and you can clearly tell it's still the Apple Store because of, you know, that logo. So yeah, these are still some more high ISO images. You know, the colors are still looking great, which is a testament to the X-Trans sensor. I mean, the X-Trans sensor has always been fantastic about that, retaining highlights and retaining shadows very well. This is a protest that Paul and I went to. Yeah. Going through some more images. People dropped masks. You know, that's also one of the problems that we've been facing as reviewers during COVID. You have to be really, really super careful about, you know, people dropping masks or not wearing their mask. You know, that's the even crazier thing. So, yeah. Of course, you know, cops not wearing masks.
Now, were all these images straight from camera JPEGs, or are these RAWs that have been edited, or are these are they a mixture?
Great question. These are all straight from the camera RAWs that were then immediately converted over to JPEG. Let me see if I can find some edits. This was edited a little bit just to get like the highlights and the defund police section. But actually, I mean, the raw file versatility on this is also very good. It's unlike some of the more modern Sony full frame sensors where you have to underexpose quite a bit and then push the details back. Instead, you know, the X-Trans sensor, it's just really good about getting both highlights and shadows. And if you push the files, as long as you're like under ISO 3200, you're not really going to get a lot of noise.
Interesting.
Yeah. What's also really great with this thing, you know, it's so small. I have the silver version, but the black version is even more stealthy. It's so small, no one's really even going to pay you very much attention versus like having like a really big camera with a giant honking lens there, you know?
Yeah, I've been experiencing the whole honking lens thing here the last couple of days.
I figured as much, yeah. Yeah, these are just more images of the Black Lives Matter stuff. You'll be able to see a lot more photos in our full review, but like this is a pretty awesome camera overall. I mean, my problems with it, you know, I wish that the battery life were still a little bit better. I wish that this little dial had a lock on it. I wish that it had a better touchscreen. I don't really have very many other problems with this camera. I think they pretty much nailed it towards being like one of the perfect cameras. The only other thing, like for me, because I wear glasses, I would like a little bit more diopter relief, but I know how difficult that is to get. Brett, I don't know if you have problems with that because you also have a really bad description. I know Paul's isn't anywhere as bad as mine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can be an issue sometimes. I mean, there's always room for improvement on stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is a pretty awesome camera. I think it's very well worth the price point. It's around the $1,200 range, and I mean, Sony's coming out with cameras like the RX107 that I really don't think really needs to be around that range. But this is, and I think it's going to be very worth it, and I think that a lot of photographers who buy this camera are going to be very happy. Now, I know that with the X100F, the previous version, a lot of photographers upgraded to it, and they thought, oh, this is a perfect camera. This is so great. This is even better, to the point where I'd even say that it's worth upgrading for. And I don't say that for a lot of like camera models that are like the next generation, but this is totally worth it. Brett and Paul, let me see if they have any questions. The volume on my Mac is at max, but I can hardly hear these guys. Any tips? New to Zoom. Chris, no audio. Gino, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Works fine for me.
Okay.
I've got the AC blaring too, so.
Yeah, understood. Okay, well, it's good to hear that you guys can still hear me. Do you guys have any questions about this camera or anything like that?
How much, like, deeper is that lens? Because it looks like it's adding quite a bit of depth when you put that filter on, right?
How much deeper is the lens? Like,
yeah. And then when you put it back on, how much does that add?
Well, that's a good question. So let's be objective about this. I have to take both the filter off.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize you had a filter on top of that.
Yeah. So this is the ring.
Okay.
And so that's it. And then I'm going to put this ring on. Okay, that's the ring.
Okay.
And now this is the filter with that.
Now that's an aftermarket filter, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Fujifilm, I believe, has made their own filters. But yeah, it becomes a little bit larger. But I think that in terms of like needing weather sealing, this is very worth it. It's still not as big as like, so I've got this. It's not as big as this, but this is a 1.4 lens.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't really know anyone that's ever put like a lens hood on these things. Actually, no, I have. There are lens hoods that go on, but I rarely see them. I mostly see people just using like this little silver ring. But if you want weather sealing, like this is worth it, I feel. Obviously, Dan sent this to me in black. You could probably get the silver one, but that's all they had available right now. And then this is it regularly. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think? Would you be opposed to the fact that, you have this much extra weight? Well, not even weight, size, to get weather sealing? Like,
It
Paul.
really depends. I mean, I'm not the type of person that puts a camera in the pocket, so that doesn't really matter to me. If I've got a camera, it's usually in my hands, But some people, if they're like traveling, oh, I can't stuff this in my back pocket. I'm like, well.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, let's see. Let's see if I can do this. All right. Skinny jeans. Pocket. Okay. Back pocket. You guys believe in me? Jeez.
This is the episode where Chris flashes everyone.
Yeah, right? Okay, it's there. It's in the back pocket. So it can fit. I mean, but like, even if you don't have it in your back pocket, would that be something that turns you off?
No.
What about you,
I mean,
Brett?
that's just me personally, but yeah, I'm curious about Brett's thoughts.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't bother me at all. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out why they just didn't weather seal that lens, and, like from the get go.
Yeah, it's not like you're saving that much in terms of like space. Might as well just keep it sealed from the get go.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I completely agree. Paul in the audience has a question. He was asking, how is the new lens compared to the X100F? That is a fantastic question. I'm really going to thank you for asking that. This lens was revamped and is so much sharper. Oh my God, it's so much better. So the previous lens wasn't fantastically sharp, and I feel like they were really overdue for an upgrade, but they kept saying, oh yeah, no, we designed that lens to be really good for the long term. Like, we're going to have a lot of cameras that have this lens. And I feel like when they started to get to the 20 plus megapixel range, it was like, guys, it's time that you need to change the lens, and every reviewer was saying it. So they did revamp the lens. This is better. It has better coatings. It has a lot more sharpness. I think it would be made even sharper if they were able to incorporate the clarity setting from the X Pro 3 into here. but it's still very solid. Where I think it can be not as solid, though, is when you use the ND filter that's built into the camera. The lens got an upgrade, but I don't think the glass on that ND filter got an upgrade. And every shot that I've shot with that ND filter has been very soft, which is sad because, you know, that filter, that little piece of glass, is closer to the sensor. So theoretically, you would think, oh, it's going to be sharper. But, you know, you're probably better off using an ND filter right here instead of using the one in the camera, which is unfortunate. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Any other questions? Anything else, guys?
Or did you pre-order one already?
No, I didn't. I really like this camera, but, you know, like, I really also like the X Pro 3. Like, I have no reason to get this camera if I have the X Pro 3, and I also have the the XH1. And believe it or not, I still use my X Pro 1. Like, the look of that, of the image quality there really reminds me of film, even though these have gotten very good as well, too. I'm glad I answered you, Paul. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, you know who I do see ordering this? I see Brett ordering it with like a custom leatherette, and not asking Sam for permission.
Absolutely, that's exactly what I would do.
Yeah. Paul, I wouldn't really see you ordering this, partially because of the fact that the grip isn't really very much there.
Yeah, that's not really for the work that I do. I don't see myself using a camera.
Yeah. Who would buy this camera? A photojournalist, a wedding photographer, a street shooter, an event shooter, a travel shooter. Like,
I can see some Nat Geo people using a camera like that, just get real up close and personal.
yeah, but in addition to that too, I mean, like, the iterations of this camera, the previous ones, won a whole bunch of World Press Photo Awards this year. So, you know, it's highly capable of doing professional work.
It would be like a good, just a second backup body for a foodie shooter in general.
I completely agree with you. One other thing that I wanted to talk about. So I'm noticing this really weird thing with the EVF and the OVF. For me, the autofocus was just a tad faster using the OVF, the optical viewfinder, versus the EVF. And I haven't had that happen to me since a previous firmware update of the Fujifilm X Pro 1. So maybe it's a weird phenomena that they'll fix. Maybe it's just a new characteristic of the camera. But it's made shooting in the OVF mode a lot more enjoyable again. I know a lot of photographers like shooting the EVF mode, but you really shouldn't sleep on that OVF mode. It's very nice, even though you're not going to get the whole depth of field look and, you know, exposure preview and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes it's just nice to be able to sit there and just, you know, rely on what you see, sort of rangefinder style. So yeah, I've taken up nearly a half hour talking about this camera. Maybe I should wait. There seems to be one more question. It's also a great body for being non-intimidating looking. Yeah, no, absolutely, Paul. Thank you for that comment. Okay. I'm not going to hog the show. Paul or Brett, fight to the death. Which one?